Does your child have an IEP? Then you've come to the right place. If they have special education services, then you're going to be sitting in a ton of IEP meetings where modifications could be added to your child's education plan. This has huge implications for your child moving forward. So inside this video, I'm going to take you behind the scenes of IEP modifications so you know what they are, when your child needs them, and how you can advocate like a pro. Hey, what's up? I'm April Rarig, your special education advocate, and this is my cat, Mrs. Capricorn. We're here to make your IEPs and 504 plans so much easier. If you're new here, go ahead and click on that subscribe button to get more videos like this in your inbox every week, and follow us on Instagram at Rise Ed Advocacy. Here's what you need to know about IEP modifications. First of all, what is an IEP modification? In a nutshell, a modification is going to change or alter what your student is taught or expected to learn. So let's take a look before we dive into IEP modifications and back it up a minute. When it comes to individual education plans, also known as IEPs, they're regulated under IDA law. The problem with special education is you parents aren't given the instructions and directions when it comes to knowing what to ask for and how to get it. So you're sitting inside your child's IEP meeting and you're like, what the heck are they talking about? Accommodations, modifications, FAPE, LRE, procedural safeguards. Oh my goodness, there are so many terms and acronyms. That's why I want you to make sure to check out our free guide, The 6 Pillars of IDA, that lays out and clarifies what those terms really mean. Make sure to grab the link in the description box below. So now you know that an IEP modification changes what your child is taught or expected to learn. Let's talk about the 2 subtypes. Yep, pro tip, there are subtypes when it comes to IEP modifications. The first one, number 1, has to do with curriculum, and this is the expectation in terms of what is being taught. The second type of IEP modification has to do with assignment, which is the actual material that is going to be presented to your child. So now you know a little bit more about what an IEP modification is. But what about if you're sitting in your child's IEP and they're talking about accommodations? Is an accommodation and an IEP modification the same thing? And the answer is no. So let's dive into how they're different or not the same. An IEP modification, like I've already said, changes what your child is instructed or expected to learn, versus an IEP accommodation changes how your child is instructed or directed when it comes to the curriculum. So IEP accommodations don't mean that your child has to have an IEP to get them. Pro tip, did you know that? Your teacher can implement IEP accommodations without even having an IEP. That means your child could have a 504 plan or an IEP or not any education plan at all. However, pro tip, when it comes to IEP modifications, more than likely your child is going to need to have an IEP for those modifications to be implemented, and pro tip, for those IEP modifications to be required and mandated for your teachers to follow. So I've got a free guide called Modifications versus Accommodations that lays it out in a checklist and is going to clarify accommodations, modifications, how they're different, how they share some things. Make sure to grab the link in the description box below so that you can choose right for your child. So now you know what is an IEP modification and the difference between modifications and IEP accommodations. So let's move on to the next thing, and this has to do with the elephant in the room in terms of Where do IEP modifications hide? What am I talking about? I'm talking about pro tip. Where do you find IEP modifications inside your child's IEP? So here's what I want you to do right now. Go ahead and pause this video and then come back to the table with your child's IEP in hand. I'll go ahead and wait. Okay, did you get the IEP in front of you? Awesome. So here's what I want you to do next. Inside your child's IEP, you're going to notice that there is actually a certain order pro tip of when things happen on the IEP. So at the very beginning of the IEP, it's going to be the information, meaning the IEP dates and all of that. That's going to be the first and second pages. And then from there on, depending on your state, you're going to have what's called present levels of academic achievement and functional performance. After this, then your team is supposed to develop the IEP goals and objectives. After the goals and objectives is where I want you to look. It's called Supplementary Aids and Services, also known as SAS. You're going to find SAS, and it's going to incorporate the IEP accommodations, modifications, and all the supports and services that are going to be incorporated into the IEP. Pro tip, this is not having to do with the placement or services. So do you see it on your child's IEP? Go ahead and take a look and notice how the accommodations and the modifications are going to be in different places because, again, like I mentioned earlier, pro tip, there's big implications in terms of what this means for your child. So perhaps you're watching this video and you're like, you know what? I am so confused about accommodations and modifications.
Yes.
Can you please explain more? Make sure to watch our video, The Difference Between IEP Accommodations and Modifications, where I dig in deep and lay it out so you have a clear understanding of what this means for your child and what it truly means in reflection on your child's IEP. Make sure to grab the link in the description box below. So now you know a little bit more about what is a modification, the difference between IEP modifications and accommodations. Now let's talk about what a modification means. How will this impact your child? So here's the deal. Modifications are going to adapt or change the expectations in terms of the pacing and the curriculum, how fast information is going to be received or responded to for your child. What am I talking about? I'm talking about that most of the other kids in your child's class are going to have a certain expectation, meaning they're expected to achieve the state standards. With an IEP modification, this alters the standards, meaning your child is going to be working on progress towards mastery. What else does it mean? Pro tip. It means that your teachers are going to have different expectations for your child. And let's be honest, those expectations are going to be lower. So perhaps your team is talking about, oh, your child needs to be in a special day class, your child needs to be in the moderate to severe program, or your child needs to have an alternate curriculum. These are all IEP modifications. So here's something else your school may not tell you. Pro tip. When you add IEP modifications, this is also going to change the trajectory or the pathways for your child moving long term when it comes to the IEP. What am I saying? I'm saying that if your child is in kindergarten, when they get to third and fourth grade, the pacing and instruction is going to be different so that when they get to middle school and high school, they may be on a non-diploma track, they may be on a certificate of completion, and maybe they won't be given the same opportunities as other students to take college prep classes, AP classes, or to take classes that would be able to graduate with a high school diploma. Did you know that? So make sure if you are stuck and you're like, oh my gosh, I've got an IEP coming up, what can I do? I've got a fillable template. It's called the IEP Meeting Request Template, and it lays out how to request an IEP meeting or how to respond to an IEP meeting notice, where you can talk to your team before the meeting and get drafts of proposed IEP documents. Yes, pro tip, you can get that, and you can know exactly how to ask and what to ask for on an IEP before even you walk in the door. Make sure to get our fillable template in the link in the description box below. Now it's time to talk about what IEP modifications look like. Let me get some examples. Make sure to write this down. First of all, the first type of IEP modification that you could be is if your child is given simpler assignments. What am I talking about? I'm talking about that your child is being given a totally different assignment that is simplified, or maybe instead of second grade, if they're in second grade, they're being given an assignment for a kindergartner. What else can IEP modifications look like? It could be that your child is given different assignments altogether, or they're being excused from the same projects as everyone else. What are some other examples of IEP modifications? It could be grading your child on their individual progress instead of what we talked about earlier, expecting them to have the same standards as everyone else. So if they're in kindergarten, expecting them to do maybe just a couple letters when everybody else in the class is expected to know the entire alphabet. See how that looks different? Now, pro tip, when it comes to simplifying IEP homework or what your child is expected in terms of the number of assignments, that more than likely is going to be an IEP accommodation and not a modification, as long as they are still expected to achieve the state standards. So what am I telling you? I'm telling you with how you structure in terms of what is inside the IEP, and the words that you use can change an IEP accommodation to a modification, or a modification to an accommodation. So make sure to check out my Do-It-Yourself IEP Meetings workshop. Why do you need this workshop? This workshop lays out for you as parents what an IEP truly is supposed to look like, how to understand all the different parts of the IEP, how to read and make sense of your child's IEP, and how to feel like you are in complete control at the table and you know what your team is offering you and how to ask for things. Stop the drama, stop the stress. Make sure to grab the link in the description box below for our Do-It-Yourself IEP Meetings workshop. Now it's time to talk about when. When does your child need an IEP modification? Here's the truth that your team isn't going to tell you. Pro tip, that your IEP team is only supposed to offer IEP modifications after they answer 4 questions. What am I talking about? I'm talking about least restrictive environment, that your team is only supposed to implement IEP modifications after they change the accommodations, after they change the services, after they change the supplementary aids and services and placement. All of that is supposed to happen after those 4 questions are answered. So has this happened for your child? Do you feel like your team is communicating with you clearly so they understand and they're communicating with you that your child needs modifications and why? Make sure to check out our video, The Truth Behind LRE, so that you can get clearly those 4 questions to ask your team before they change your child's placement, and you can feel so much better at the table. Make sure to grab the link in the description box below. So now you know what an IEP modification is, where they hide, and when your child might need a modification. Let me ask you something. What do you want to do differently before your child's next IEP meeting? It's a really good one. Got a question? Make sure to type it in the link in the description box below. Want me to do another video? Yep, I can do it there too. If you want to check out our fillable guides and templates, check them all out below. Make sure to like and subscribe to get more videos like this in your inbox every week, and follow us on Instagram at RiseEdAdvocacy. I'm April Rarig, your special education advocate. I can't wait to see you for our next video.